All right. I thought we'd start in the secondary, of course. And I think, number one, there's more people under contract. It seems like that might actually be starters in the secondary. But we're going to work from the back up to the front of the defense. And we're going to start in the secondary. So how many safeties and corners? You can break them up as you want to go through each group of these players. But how many definitive starters are on the roster currently and under contract for the Tennessee Titans in the secondary?
2. Roger McCreary and Amani Hooker. I mean, it's pretty straightforward that Roger McCreary may not be a starting outside corner, but as far as how the NFL plays defense, as far as how Denard Wilson has shown to play defense, or may show to play defense, based on his history and stuff, nickelback is a starter. Your starting nickelback corner is a starter in the NFL, so it'd be Roger McCreary and Amani Hooker. If you're trotting out a 2 cornerback set, he would technically not be the starter, but in the state of the current roster, he would be, because there is like nobody on this team. But as far as a starter for this team, Roger McCreary, Amani Hooker, hands down.
So I've got those 2 written down. I've got Amani Hooker 2 years left, of course. Then he's a UFA. McCreary 2 years left on his rookie deal. I agree. Assuming that you're going to have a slot corner, he is clearly your starting slot corner there. I wrote down Elijah Molden, and I had him down as a starter because now could they go into free agency, and we'll get to this. They could address that and upgrade that position, which I think is maybe likely. But I think for now, he is guaranteed to be on the team. He's got 1 year left on his rookie deal, and he is probably, if not a starter, the first guy off the bench.
I have him as a potential starter. So depending on what they do in free agency, like you said, I mean, I have it like starters, potential starters, long shot starters, and depth pieces. And so when you ask me who's starting, who's a lock to start, you can't put Molden in that, but you can put Molden in as a potential starter that could eventually be a lock to start if they do not address it in free agency, if they do not bring back maybe a Kayvon Wallace, if they do not draft a safety, then Elijah Molden looks to be your starting safety.
How do you feel about that in particular? Like, again, we could get into some of the...
I've been very consistent in my Molden coverage over this season. When they started putting him at safety, I think we both agreed that safety was a better position. At some point, you misinformed yourself and you took the wrong stance that he was not good when he played at safety, and he was very good when he played at safety. Well, I would say very good. He was league average starting good when he played safety, and I have been that point the whole time that Elijah Molden, good player, good average starting safety in the NFL, but slightly above average hybrid player, I guess you would say, like slightly above average, where if he's in the box or he needs to do different things, he can do stuff for you that most other people can't, because he has good football instincts. He may not have the athletic skill, but he has it between the brains, and that's really what matters, and he has it. There's a lot of people, and you're not the only one, but there's a lot of people who buried Elijah Molden at one point, then dug him up and propped him up, and then they buried him again. And I think that's incorrect way to look at it. And I think that if you don't think that at least Elijah Molden is a league average safety, then you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Wait, so when you said you meant like me specifically, not like the
eventually,
collective.
yes. You were totally against Elijah Molden at some point during the regular season, and I had to talk. I disagreed with you. We disagreed on this show about Elijah Molden during the season. And so, yes, beginning you, then the royal you was used later.
Well, I don't remember that at all. So if the audience wants to, drag me for that,
Tony remembers if he's watching.
Totally fine.
Because I know he mentioned something in the chat.
I'm assuming he had a couple of bad moments. I do remember a few missed tackles because I've always appreciated his ability to tackle in space. But Elijah Molden is a player that I remember day one as a rookie that I thought was like a very good, to your point, IQ football player. I think in the new positionless world that they are going towards, he brings a ton to the table, because even if he is not your true like high point, too high safety look starter, because maybe he doesn't have those traditional skills. I mean, there are some 5'10", 5'11" safeties that can play that high point. Antoine Winfield, I think, is undersized. But like he gives you so much versatility to match up with whatever the offense wants to put in from a personnel standpoint. 21, 12, 13. wide, it doesn't matter. He can play a lot of those different positions. I am, as a football player, I am largely an Elijah Molden fan. So I'm taken aback by my own takes if that's what I said. So I've always thought he's a
People that went really hard on Elijah Molden right around the prior to the KB trade, I believe, is when people and maybe it was more of a reaction to KB being traded, but Elijah Molden was the better corner, and I had to or not corner, better safety for a couple of weeks. After a couple of weeks, and he ended up being up the better safety anyway at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I kept telling people, had to tell people and bring the stats up that like the stats show he is a better safety than current Kevin Byard. So that's just kind of where I'm at on that. But here's the thing is that this team has a bunch of players that you can upgrade from. I'm not saying that you cannot upgrade from Elijah Molden, but do you have to upgrade above Elijah Molden as a top priority for this defense? Not when you're looking at the rest of this team.
Yeah, I agree with that. Z Dean says, of course, with the right coaching, Molden could be Geno Stone or better, in his opinion. Of course, D Good says, I'm always Team Zach against Braden Elliott. Screw Braden. All right, we're off and running today. This is going to be a wonderful show brought to you by Sinkers Beverages.
Yeah. Trey Avery, take him or leave him. If he makes the team, he makes the team. If he doesn't make the team, he doesn't make the team. But I think that out of all the cornerbacks that we have yet to talk about, or defensive backs that we have yet to talk about that are under contract, Trey Avery is a guy that may be able to stick around, but we're talking cornerback 6, cornerback 7 type stuff. Hopefully this team upgrades tremendously in the defensive backfield, and it's got quite the opportunity to do so.
Oh yes, it does. Just a real quick note, of course, Christian Fulton, Sean Murphy Bunting, Terrell Edmonds, Kayvon Wallace, probably the top 4 that are all free agents. Of course, Sean Murphy Bunting, I think, is very a likely target to be brought back. Caleb Farley still under contract for a year. Not sure what that means. You've got some of these other names, and a lot of these are just like sort of scout team contracts, essentially. Eric Garror, Shaheem Carter, Anthony Kendall, Tay Gowan. Those guys are under contract, but those are not like real contracts, if for lack of a better term.
Like, I mean, those are not players that you need to be to make. If you're a depth piece, I feel like you are a guy that's going to that has a good chance to make the final 53. Those guys I do not feel the same about. But also, like you talk about Sean Murphy Bunting, it's 1:12 p.m. on a Monday. They still have about an hour and 45 minutes to get something done before his void years accelerate. Him, Azeez Al-Shaair, Derrick Henry, and of course Ryan Tannehill, which are not going to get anything done. But those guys, if they let that slide, then whatever your cap hit is for Sean Murphy Bunting, if you were to bring him back, would be $1.6 million. And if you want a little preview of whether I talk about changing your tune, I don't think they bring Sean Murphy Bunting back. And here's why. I think he's a good cornerback too. So if they brought him back, I'm not going to be like totally surprised or totally upset. But if I had to guess, the way that they talked about playing man coverage, the way they want to be physical and all that kind of stuff, that's not Sean Murphy Bunting. Now, whether that's not Sean Murphy Bunting because of the system last year or that's really his game, but last year he was not very good as a man cover corner. He had the 12th highest reception percentage allowed in man coverage, 20 catches on 29 targets for 69% rate. And like I said, maybe it's scheme related, but that doesn't scream like a guy that is going to fit with what this new look Titans defense wants to do. So I'm a little cool on Sean Murphy Bunting, but I would be fine if he came back as cornerback too.
It does feel like if they are going to spend big, a la Malcolm Butler's contract, that if they're going to spend big on somebody, it does feel like a number 1 corner, whether that's L'Jarius Sneed or Jalen Johnson that Chicago probably gets franchised. You've got some lesser options that maybe aren't like true elite number 1s, but it does feel like that if they do go big, and meaning contract size and investment, it does feel like corner could be the one that free agency and dollars is a more effective way to solve that problem than some of the other positions. And
1,000% agree with you. I think that when you look at some of the free agent cornerbacks that are coming on the market, I think Jeff Okudah is a guy that people have kind of forgotten about, but he really rebounded in Atlanta under that defense. And then, of course, don't forget the secondary coach was Steven Jackson, and
Yep.
Frank Bush also knows Jeff Okudah. That could be a cheap option. Like if you brought in, instead of bringing back Sean Murphy Bunting and maybe paying for, because I guess we can go ahead and just talk about corners real quick. But if you were to bring in Chidobe Awuzie and Jeff Okudah instead of just paying Jalen Johnson, I think that's a better use of money than spending one big ticket item, get you two good starters in the NFL, Chidobe Awuzie and Jeff Okudah, who have ties to this staff, and bring in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as well to be the safety opposite of Amani Hooker, and he has ties to this staff. I don't know. That sounds like a pretty good secondary. Instead of spending like $50 million on one guy, spread that $25 million, take that half and spread it among three guys for the secondary.
So I was looking at the numbers. Like Awuzie looks like he's about a $7-ish million player. Again, I'm just going to ballpark this for the sake of the conversation.
Yeah,
Geno Stone also around a 7. I'm going to put him on the same, again, coached by Denard Wilson in Baltimore last year. He's about a 7 million, 24 years old, about a $7 million player. Those two players is the cost of Snead. And so if you could get Geno Stone and Awuzie at the same cost as Snead, are you a better football team? Maybe not. But are you a deeper team?
Better than last year? Yeah.
No, yes. I just mean like with Snead, I mean like if you're saying like Molden is this versatile piece you can move all around because Stone is now playing starting safety with, of course, Awuzie, are you better than if you have Snead? I don't know. I don't know. Are you a deeper team that has more options? Yes. The answer is yes. And so I think depth is important here, and not to give away sort of, again, my prioritization of the positions. But I think corner it was always like sort of second tier, but pretty high. But I think there's a chance it might even be higher than I think we as a collective group have talked about it.
Well, I've kind of came around to that at the Senior Bowl. And then I'm with you even more. Like I'm more in that camp now. Like I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm just across the line, right? Haven't really bought a house yet. I'm just on the sidewalk looking. Now I'm ready to buy a house on that side. And just because of how this team apparently wants to play defense. And I think the words of Denard Wilson that we've talked about over and over, that the way that man-to-man, they want to attack. The only way you can do that is by having corners who can play man-to-man and allow your defense flexibility, versatility in terms of how you want to attack the quarterback. And I think the more defensive backs, the better. I think you have to have, in today's NFL, you have to have a shutdown corner, or at the very least, two slightly above average corners. And the Tennessee Titans haven't had that since Malcolm Butler and Logan Ryan playing the outside before Logan Ryan eventually moved on the inside. And then it was Adoree Jackson and Malcolm Butler. And all three of those guys I thought were above average starters. And I think the defense really showed out towards that 2019 coverage wise. And that's what matters in today's NFL.
I always think of that Logan Ryan year as the thing I want to see from Elijah Molden. Like he's got a similar skill set. You can blitz him a couple of times a game if you want to. He can cover if you need to. He can cover backs. You can roll him into the box and play him against tight ends. So like I probably agree with you that he's not technically a locked in starter, but I feel like he is a major contributing piece no matter what they do in free agency. So again, at least I feel like there are three commodities in the secondary when you really need like 8. so
yes, that's what I was about to say. You got McCreary, right? So with McCreary, you still need, with the way this roster looks, you still need 3 corners, right? Minimum.
Yeah, probably.
You still need 3 corners.
I mean, Caleb Farley
doesn't have to be starting caliber or anything like that, but you need 3 corners because you got to have depth, and there is no depth in this cornerback room. As far as safety, you just need 2 guys. If one of those guys happens to be Kayvon Wallace, who yet again has history with Denard Wilson, back when Denard Wilson was with the Eagles, that's a guy that with Elijah Molden, and maybe you bring in Geno Stone, but I don't think that you would double dip with Kayvon Wallace and Geno Stone. there's a guy like Mike Brown that could be out there. Andrew Adams could come back. You know, there's guys like that could be your fourth safety. But I think you got to find a safety, whether that's Kayvon Wallace, Geno Stone, or a draft pick.
Edmonds is not an option for you coming back. Just you like Wallace as a cheaper fourth option. Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's.
I
guess a fourth option maybe, but if they don't bring him back, that tells you what Denard Wilson thought of him in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I guess that's true.